Now, switching gears, let's talk a bit about some of the innovations that we are doing in Zscaler Internet Access to reduce the overall risk of getting compromised. Now, the first thing you observe today is the most popular attack vector for the initial compromise of users is phishing. In fact, last year, we observed almost 1 billion targeted phishing attempts through the platform, which we stopped. And not surprisingly, 30% of these phishing attacks were leveraging Microsoft domains, right? Or squatted domains that look like Microsoft domains. And another interesting statistic is that the lifetime of some of these new phishing pages is less than 13 hours, so almost half a day. So if you're relying on techniques that have a database of known phishing sites, you're not going to be very effective at stopping these targeted phishing attacks. You've seen this movie play many times with your user community. They get an email that looks like a genuine work email with a link. They click on it. It takes you to a login page that looks like your genuine company login. And sometimes you get a bad page, and your credentials have been stolen at that point. So what are we doing to dynamically use machine learning and AI techniques to be able to catch these phishing pages, especially when they have such a small half-life, right? And this is where we use sophisticated machine learning techniques where we analyze the hosting provider, referrer tags, the age of the domain. We look at certificate information. We're able to do brand resemblance comparisons using some of the machine learning techniques. We look at the form structure. We also analyze the types, the post transactions to these sites and look for deviations from what we would expect. And based on all of these types of features, we are able to effectively start blocking new phishing sites inline, which reduces that initial compromise quite dramatically. So how effective has this been? This has been running inline for about 6 months, and we have been catching about 10,000 new phishing sites every month. So about 60,000 new phishing sites that probably wouldn't be known to databases are being blocked. 230 new phishing sites a day is kind of the run rate that we're seeing now. And all our customers are instantly getting protected from these advanced phishing attempts. Now let's talk a bit about browser isolation. That's another new feature that we've been constantly innovating on. For those of you who don't understand browser isolation, think of a Chrome browser running in the Zscaler cloud, where you can safely look at suspicious sites that could be a risk to the user, or very confidential sites that you don't want exposure on the endpoint, particularly in a BYOD type scenario. And how does this work? Well, the browser in the cloud essentially renders the page, and you get a stream of HTML5 pixels sent to the endpoint. So the risk of exposure is very, very low. Now, here's the challenge. Customers came back and said, well, this is great. I don't want to isolate everything, but how do I know what I should or shouldn't isolate? The known bad, you obviously block. The known good, you obviously allow. There might be a big gray area in between where you are not quite sure. To help our customers, now we've introduced this AI/ML-powered smart cloud browser isolation. And what does that do? That essentially takes the guesswork out of figuring out a policy that will isolate potentially dangerous destinations. It's a great user experience and security trade-off. Let's take a look at how this works. Just like we have one-click Office 365 and many one-click features, this is a simple policy. You enable it. It starts evaluating all transactions for all users. It starts then assessing dynamically whether a page is suspicious. And once it determines that a page is suspicious, it can automatically redirect that transaction to our cloud browser and thereby reduce your risk because it's never being rendered on the end user machine. Does that make sense? Good. So now let's take a look at how we identify these suspicious domains behind the policy that is being leveraged for browser isolation. And again, we're using machine learning here. We're extracting a lot of features. All of this is possible because we're running inline with SSL inspection, and we can look at content of transactions. So we're looking at who the domain and hosting provider is. We're looking at the structure of the page. We're looking at doing an entropy analysis of the domain name. Does it look like a typo squatted domain? Looking at a dynamic page risk score on that content. And then more importantly, also, what are the relationship that this domain has to other domains, and that gives us very good indicators of whether this is a potentially malicious domain. So all of this is happening in the background, and we're able to dynamically assess risk and steer that transaction based on a simple one-click policy. So now, what is the challenge? I mean, why? If you ask me, the platform has all the capabilities today to block threats, and still sometimes people do get infected. Customers struggle to put these protections into effect, and sometimes adversaries continue to be successful. So why is that? And the challenge is, in many cases, customers don't know how to have an effective enforcement policy. So for that, we are introducing this concept of risk-based policy. As I said, the obvious known bad stuff you want to block, the obvious known good stuff you want to allow. The gray area is where IT struggles. Should I have a policy that blocks it? Will my users complain? So, we've revamped our overall risk report in ZIA, and you can get a very good comprehensive view of what your overall risk posture is as far as internet activity is concerned. But more importantly, you can start now looking at a user-level risk. So here you're seeing a user risk report based on behavioral anomalies that we have detected from the user, and you can see a particular user's risk score over time. What are the factors that are contributing to that user's risk? It could be malicious activity. It could be the content of files that he or she has downloaded. They could be violating a compliance category, et cetera. So based on that risk, we are now able to do dynamic policies. This is a big new enhancement that we are adding in Zscaler Internet Access, as well as Zscaler Private Access, where risk becomes a top-level policy criteria for all the policies that you define. So here, you have a user identity, but you want to continuously assess the risk associated with that identity. And based on risk, device posture, you want access policies that change, right? So this allows you to now effectively not have to guess whether this is a allowed or a blocked transaction, and the gray area in between gets addressed very, very well. There are many, many other enhancements that we are going to launch with our 6.2 release. 3 in particular I thought would be worth highlighting, as many of you have asked about it. We will be supporting IPv6. You will be able to send native IPv6 traffic to the Zscaler cloud. We'll be doing full inspection with HTTP 2.0. And I know a bunch of organizations have been waiting for cloud HSM support to manage their SSL interception keys as well. So there's about 100+ features that we're launching with our 6.2 release that should be coming out in fall. If you're interested, please attend some of our breakouts. We'll be going deeper into some of those features.